Well, hello, friends. I hope you're having a great day today. Welcome to Thursday's edition of Take 5. We are talking about Holy Week this week. That pertains to the last week of Jesus' ministry and life before He went to the cross on Friday. And we've been looking at everything that He did and said and taught the disciples there on that week. Now, Thursday was a big day for Jesus. So many things happened on Thursday that we don't really have time to go into all of it in detail. But I do want to take the time to try to at least list all of the events that transpired in His life on the last day that He would live before He would be crucified and die. Now, if you knew you only had one day to live, what would you do? I've thought about this before, believe it or not. I know that sounds a little dark to some, but I have thought about that before. I'm not real sure. I think I'd want to be with my family and those that's closest to me. But if you knew that you had one day to live and that was all that, what would you do? Maybe you would eat a good meal, or maybe that visit with close friends or family. Maybe you'd do something spontaneous like go skydiving or something like that. I don't know. Jesus knew that this was His last day, and He chose to spend it with His disciples by doing some things that were very significant, some things that would be with the disciples from then on, even until this very day, some things that would be with us. So I want to look at those things if we can. First of all, He celebrated Passover with them. The Passover was the meal to commemorate that first Passover that took place in Egypt when God delivered Israel from the bondage and the slavery of those Egyptian taskmasters there. Jesus sat around the table with His disciples, remembering and forever memorializing all of those lambs that had died and all of the blood that had been shed since that first Passover so long ago. And as He is doing this, He is giving them a picture that this is something that's no longer going to have to happen, because the final Passover lamb has been born. That final Passover lamb is about to be crucified, and it is none other than He Himself. He's revealing to them that the last Passover lamb that needs to be sacrificed is going to be Himself. This is going to bring an end to that old covenant and all of those sacrifices and bring a beginning to a new covenant of faith where Jesus is the one and only lamb that is sacrificed. He said to them in Luke 22, as He took bread there and gave thanks, and He broke it and He gave it to them, saying, "This is my body that's given for you. Do this in remembrance of me." And in the same way, after supper, He took the cup, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood, which is poured out for you." Jesus has communion. That final Passover, we call it the Last Supper. He has communion with the disciples, forever memorializing that old covenant, but institutionalizing and starting that brand new covenant where He's the last lamb that ever has to be sacrificed. All that we need to do now is believe and have faith in that lamb, and our sins can be forgiven. Secondly, Jesus took the time to wash their feet as an example of servanthood. Now imagine that. This is the last day that this man is going to be alive before His crucifixion, and He takes the time to wash His disciples' feet. If there was one final lesson He wanted them to remember, it was to remind them of their call to servanthood. John said, "I have set an example that you should do as I've done for you. Very truly, I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is the messenger greater than the one who sent them." He wanted those disciples to remember that their purpose there was to serve and not to be served. Thirdly, Jesus prayed over His disciples. John chapter 13 through 17 reveal everything that Jesus shared with His disciples as He did this to encourage them, and the prayer that He prayed over them before He left. Just a few of those verses say this: "I have given them your word." Jesus now is praying to God the Father for the disciples, and He says, "I have given them your word, and the world has hated them For they are not of the world any more than I'm of the world. My prayer is not that you take them out of the world, but that you protect them from the evil one. My prayer is not for them alone, but I pray also for all of those who will believe in me through their message. Do you know that Jesus, on the last Thursday of His life before He was crucified, that He spent it encouraging those that were going to be left behind, that would start the church, and He prayed for them. And not only did He pray for them, but He also prayed for those that would believe in Him because of their message. That's you and me. 2,000 years ago, on the last Thursday of His life, Jesus spent time praying for you and for me. The last thing that He did was He took those disciples with Him as He went into the Garden of Gethsemane, because He was going there to pray for strength to endure the horrific night that He was about to face. Everything that Jesus had done on this Thursday had been for the benefit of the disciples. He knew what He was about to face. He knew what He was going through. And still He preferred them over Himself. Man, what a Lord, what a God He was. And now in the most trying moment of His life, those disciples that He has spent the whole week and this whole day in particular trying to encourage, now every one of them, one by one, began to let Him down. The disciples slept. Peter, James, and John slept while Jesus was praying. 3 times He come back to wake them, telling them, pray, pray, pray. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Coming back the 3rd time, each time finding them asleep, He finally said, just sleep on and take your rest. Now it's time to go. Judas betrayed Him on that night. Eventually, all the disciples ran away in fear, and it would be on this very night, on Thursday night, that Peter would betray Jesus and declare, I don't know who he is. All alone, at the end of His day, Jesus faced an armed crowd that came to arrest Him. And He submitted to their violence, and He walked off into the darkest night that anyone would ever face, to be tried, to be tested, to be beaten, to be brutalized, and to drink the cup that His Father had given Him, so that all the world, that's you and me, so that everyone could be saved. This is what happened on the last Thursday that Jesus lived before He was crucified. You know what? I bet your Thursday has been better than His was. But I'm going to go ahead and say this. I'm glad He went through what He went through on that Thursday, because if He hadn't have been willing to do it, you and I would still be eternally lost to this very day. Well, hey, I've got to get out of here. It's been good being with you today. I look forward to tomorrow as we gather for Friday's edition of Take 5 and talk about the events on the day that Jesus Christ was crucified. And then we're going to gather at the church at 12 to take communion together, commemorating the price that Jesus paid. I look forward to being with you tomorrow. God bless you. Have a great day. Trust the Lord, friend. He will never fail you.